my teacher announced that if anyone needed to pray, there was a designated prayer room that you could visit whenever you needed. As a naive fifth grader, I saw this as the perfect opportunity to grow closer to God. However, when I got there, I soon realized that this prayer room was not for Christians. This was a prayer room that was created for Muslims to pray whenever they needed to pray. At the time, I didn't know a whole lot about any other religions besides Christianity, and I was shocked at what I was seeing here. I told the teacher supervising the room, "I think I'll just pray over here," and I went and prayed in the corner by myself. From this day forward, I started to understand that not everyone that I met in life was going to be a Christian like me. I go to public school, and going to public school has completely defined the way that I use Christianity in my life. Not that many of my friends have ever known God, and so my role from God as a Christian is to introduce those friends to Christianity. Although I may be one Christian in a sea of non-believers, I can always know that God has put me in public school to help spread the word to those that don't know Him. Public school has been a valuable experience for me, but not all of my friends have shared that experience. A lot of my friends go to private Christian academies, and I completely understand the reasoning. Schools that have a God-centered focus will help kids stay focused on God in school, and there's also less risk of peer pressure or getting negatively influenced. The benefits of going to private school are real, but I think a lot of people forget about all the benefits of public school as well. Although public school may not be as God-centered, there are valuable experiences that I and many of my friends gained from going to public school as Christians. After getting baptized, I joined a discipleship group at church, and the best place for me to begin making new disciples was at school, because of the large number of people that don't know a whole lot about God. Being able to spread Christianity to a larger audience is a benefit of throwing yourself into unfamiliar, less Christian situations, which is not something that people often choose to experience. However, it can be nerve-wracking to try to put yourself out there in those new environments. There's no way of knowing how someone's going to react to Christianity, whether they're unfamiliar with the religion or they just have a bad experience with it. But continuing to try to make disciples, even with that fear of rejection in mind, will eventually lead to success. Take Rahab, for example. A prostitute in the city of Jericho, Rahab doesn't exactly come to mind when thinking of the ideal Christian. Although Rahab may seem a little questionable from this description, she ends up being instrumental in Joshua taking the city of Jericho. You see, Jericho is a city of sinners, with no one in the entire city being a Christian except for Rahab. God has told Joshua to send spies to investigate the city, so that Israel could eventually take it over. Rahab agrees to take in the spies, and says to them, "For the Lord your God, He is God in the heavens above, and on the earth beneath. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that, as I have dealt kindly with you, you will also deal kindly with my father's house. And give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all those who belong to them, and save their lives from death." Rahab knows that God is planning the destruction of her city, and respects His power. Because of her faith, she speaks out to a group of unfamiliar spies and asks them to protect her and her family, even though she has sinned. I can't even begin to consider the position of Rahab. Imagine being there, knowing that the lives of you and your family are in the hands of these two men that you don't even know. It's likely that all they knew about her was that she was a prostitute, which wasn't exactly helping her chances of the men accepting her. Despite these fears that must have been running through her head, Rahab had the courage to speak up, and it eventually paid off. When Jericho was destroyed a few days later, Rahab's house with her family inside was the only surviving building. Today we know Rahab as the mother of Boaz, one of the ancestors of Jesus. What Rahab does here is something I always want to remember when I am trying to spread Christianity in my school community. Rahab is just one Christian, but she's able to have a huge impact on the capture of Jericho and on Christianity in general, being part of the line of Jesus. But if she never had the courage to speak against Jericho to the spies, none of this ever would have happened to her, and Jesus himself never would have been born. This doesn't only apply to big issues like the capture of a city. Think about trying to spread Christianity in your community. If you didn't have the courage to talk to people in your school, then they would never have the chance to become Christians themselves. We have to have the courage to advocate Christianity to those who need it the most, even if we're afraid. Discipleship is one of the foundations of Christianity. In the Great Commission, Jesus says to the apostles that they should go therefore and make disciples of all nations. And this applies to us as well. Oftentimes, a lot of us seem to forget this. When was the last time that you went out into an uncomfortable situation to try to spread Christianity? To be honest, it isn't an easy thing to do. Even though you get used to talking about God with non-believers eventually, it can still be intimidating to try to speak to somebody about Christianity without knowing how they're going to react. But after you gather all of your courage and just take that first step and talk to them about God, it becomes so much easier to continue that conversation. God is always pushing us into opportunities and situations that allow us to spread the gospel in our communities. For me, going to a public school is my opportunity. but for you, it could be something completely different. Next time you approach an unfamiliar situation, remember that God has put you where you are for a reason. Take a deep breath, gather your courage, and go forth and take a risk for God. You never know how well it could pay off for you.